We're here, Aljoša and I, to talk about Star Wars. What are we calling this one, Aljoša?
Rise of Damage Control.
Rise of Damage Control.
Although maybe one of us might not agree with that kind of title.
No, that's an appropriate title. I think
we'll
agree about that. What I think happened is that Aljoša and I both went to the movie yesterday, and we watched it. And I went with my buddy Kai, and we watched it together. And we came out with different experiences. Do you want to say more about that?
We were asking ourselves what stars we gave. I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say I went a bit lower, and then when I asked you, you said, well, I'm giving it a bit higher. And I'm like,
what? Why?
Yeah,
that's what we're going to talk about.
So it's going to be interesting to see. This might be a first time that me and David will maybe clash our lightsabers a bit. We'll see. I think it should be more fun for the audience listening to see that we don't have to be on the same page and still have a civil conversation. If it's gonna be civil. If it's not gonna be civil, then obviously.
You're going down, Aljoša. Let me tell you right now, you're wrong.
My shields are impenetrable.
Join me.
I'm not gonna join the light side this time.
The light side.
J.J. Abrams is a schmuck.
Okay,
well, let's hear about your experience. What was it like for you?
I will start with maybe some good points. It probably did feel the most Star Warsy, because I didn't like The Force Awakens. Let me get that straight. The Force Awakens for me is not any better than The Last Jedi. So for me, it's almost the same. It does feel the most Star Warsy. It did feel kind of adventure-y, and there were a lot of Star Wars themes and a lot of nostalgia. But we gotta know the fact that this was a continuation of the old story. So this was episode 7, 8, and 9. And obviously, anybody who's going to be watching these movies needs to see them in a totality. It would be extremely weird to just look at this as a standalone movie. And if you do look at it as a standalone movie, then I can maybe say, well, it's a kind of quirky, funny, flat action adventure that some kids may like. But if I want to look at it from like a holistic perspective, all the way from the prequels to the originals to this, then these last 3 Star Wars movies from Disney are nothing but a huge cluster with directors directing over each other with no kind of coherent redlining. There's no direction. Everybody's just doing their own thing. And when I look at it from that perspective, which is the perspective most people would look at, because we view some of the critics already and most of them were disappointed in general because they all looked at it from that perspective. And for me, at the end of the day, it felt empty and cheap, or like weird jokes, forced chemistry, checkmark storyline, checkmark nostalgia moments like Chewie getting the medal as if that was the most important thing. Deus Ex Machina, unexpected power, or the event saving a seemingly hopeless situation. Fast dialogue. Dialogue was not about internalization of the character. It was just to move the story on. So it was like I call it ADHD dialogue. So for me, this movie didn't really feel like a movie, but more like a video game. And I actually played the video game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Whatever you do, don't reach within.
And even that felt deeper as a video game than this movie did. And it's like an ADHD Star Wars movie because it had to fix so much from the previous episodes that it couldn't really take its time, breathe a little bit. And I think that's what, in my opinion, destroyed it at the end. And that's how it destroyed all the sequel trilogy from the 7, 8, 9. What was your first kind of impression?
Well, I went with my buddy Kai, and when we got out of the theaters, I said to him, I think he pulled it off. And Kai was like, this is a terrible movie. And he said basically everything that you said. He says it feels like a ride, it feels cheap, it feels shallow, it feels pandering, never gives us time to really deal with any of it. But, I guess while I agree and understand with a lot of those things, I expected it to be all that kind of stuff on the front end, I guess. And so not a lot of that stuff really bothered me. Like, I was watching it more from like a meaning and symbol and archetype kind of perspective. He was also coming up with production type things that he didn't like about the movie. But we were having some things that we said that we like. Like, there is that one shot where they're walking down the hall and they're shooting the stormtroopers. They're shooting the stormtroopers and they're like falling in front of the camera. The camera's panning back. Like, so that was really cool. We haven't really seen that kind of perspective in Star Wars before. But then a lot of it, like later, like when they're fighting on the ship, it feels like very not real and more like detached. But to me, I guess I feel it wasn't as submersive. I guess I almost see it like as a different stylistic approach. Like, for example, I think the beginning scene where it's like we're speed jumping on the front end, it seems like, what? No, this is dumb. You can't do this. This is whatever. But on the back end, in retrospect, I almost think it's kind of a very knowing metaphor to be like, look, this is setting the tone for the kind of trip you're about to go on. It's kind of going to be warp jumpy through stuff. And I guess there's a lot of people make these points. It touches on this really emotional, important theme and then immediately undercuts it by cutting away and giving us no time to process. But again, I think a lot of these things actually make sense metaphorically as comments about the postmodern age. I think this movie is very much a product of the current zeitgeist. And that's why I think I find it interesting. Like, that's how life is. You have these powerful, important moments in your life and then, oh, got to go back to work. Oh, now you got to do this. And it's like, there is no time to process. That's how it is. This sort of breakneck speed and this ADD type of ride. It's interesting. You know, it also reminds me of the kind of criticisms I get about my videos and stuff. This kind of generation gap. For those who don't know, I go through and we edit out all the gaps. We take out all the ums. We really do a lot of work to cut these things down and make them tight. And then some people really don't like fast, unnatural kind of editing. They feel like I'm not respecting them enough to just let them watch it. Like, I don't think that they're going to have the time, and they don't, because you cut these long talks down and they're still long and people complain about them. So not only is that a thing, I think younger people want it faster. Give it to me now. They are used to processing faster. Older people aren't as used to processing faster. It's actually kind of interesting if you think about it from that perspective. I respect you as an audience member. You don't necessarily need time to process. You could process as we are in this next scene. Here we go. Here's the next thing. You know, we're light speed jumping. From the perspective of taking this on as a project, as a director, in the light of the other movies, in the light of what happened in the last movie, to try to tie up all these threads, the project of trying to do that, to try to fix all this stuff and make it work somehow and make it good and make it be a good cap to the end of this thing, I think he pulled it off. There are some things that I would have done differently, but in terms of weaving these things back together in a way that maintains the world and brings us to a good conclusion, I feel like he did an all right job with that. I don't think I could have done better as a director, given the context. I think you almost have to move through it in breakneck speed to try to fix all this stuff. And I think he addressed a lot of the problems that I had in the last movie and did it in a way where it was like Luke catches the lightsaber and takes it back, and we got Rey practicing and studying, and we see her and Kylo fighting, and he's not trying to kill her. It's kind of clear in how they're fighting. So I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of nuanced things that he did in this movie that actually fix a lot of the past problems. Another thing I really like about this movie, and we're not even getting really into the message yet, I do think that there's a lot of good themes in there. One of the other things I think that he fixed in this movie that goes back to some of the very original problems with Star Wars is this idea of the dark side and the light side, and this kind of like huge false binary. Like, I really like that we have stormtroopers who gave up their arms, and we get to see more of the shades of gray where we can see it's not just this black and white. And a lot of people, I think, are also going to criticize it for these new expanded powers. I actually like that thematically too, like the fact that these people like Luke, they were even just barely tapping the potential of the Force, and that these new younger generations are going to be able to get in touch with it more easily and have even more power. That and like the generations thing, I feel like there's lots of good stuff in here. I was pretty happy with it as a viewing experience. This is a movie about space wizards for kids, and it's going to be pretty freaking cheesy, and the humor is going to be silly, and here we go. And it was alright. I enjoyed it.
Well, okay, so let me talk about this. One of the things that could happen is, because we grew up with different movies, so I grew up with the prequels, I assume you did too. And the older generation obviously grew up with the originals, right? So how will this generation who grew up with the Disney sequels, how will they view these movies compared to probably next movies who come in next few years, right? So it will be interesting to see, because even prequels originally were really hated, but now they are like beloved by the younger generation.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird, because originally George Lucas was the main protagonist, and now Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, and Rian Johnson are the evil people. But maybe in the future they will be the good guys, and some new producers or directors will be the bad people. So it's kind of interesting how the light and the dark side change even within our Hollywood industry.
It's very, very interesting. This whole Star Wars, like, it has transcended just being about movie. Now it is a worldwide mythology that, like you're saying, different generations have the heroes from their time and the production value of their time. And that's what feels right and comfortable to them. And that's part of what nostalgia is. It's nice that there are these repeating themes and this kind of rhyming that happens. I think it's nice to play into that. A lot of people are like, quit rubbing nostalgia in my face. Stop. But that's what it is. That's what this world is. And to some extent, you gotta respect that. Like, I feel like a lot of people want to see a serious adult movie about Jedi warriors, and that's not what it is. That's not what it should be. I feel like it has become more of a ride. That's true. It has become for more people. But if you're gonna make something that appeals to the whole spiral, it's gotta be thin. The messages can't be super deep. If you get too much into the super deep, you lose people. You just lost the kids, and we gotta keep the kids engaged. And so this is a movie for everyone. And there's depth to be found in this thing. And the symbols are super deep, even if they come at you in this quick-paced ride in this bubblegum pop format. I feel like this movie as a artifact, as a style, it very much reflects the time. It's very cutting edge in its presentation. It's beautiful. It represents a new time in cinema history. And I think a lot of people who complain about it are starting from this perception like Star Wars is supposed to be what it was in the past. People also criticize like, oh, they went into this thing without a plan. And while I think if I was trying to do it as the producer, I would have tried to come up with an overarching plan because I'm a planner. But George Lucas didn't have a plan. This whole thing is a very green project. It's like, let's go with the flow. He made this one movie and it did well. And he's like, well, dang, let's make another one. And he's been freestyling and playing and doing things that have been criticized. Like, these movies have been broadly accepted and criticized and marvels and amazing feats of production since the beginning. It's always been like this. I don't feel like it's anything new. I feel like a lot of the things that people are critical of is because they don't know what they're looking at. They want it to be something that it's not.
Well, I think that the problem here is that it almost seems like you are trying to defend that this was like a kind of almost like a conscious stylistic decision. I think it was just a rushed mess. Sure, you can just say, well, you know, it's going for the times, but the problem now, you haven't seen The Mandalorian, but Mandalorian goes super slow compared to this, right? And yes, people love Mandalorian a lot more than this.
And it's a TV series. You can take your time to develop characters over a long.
Right. Even even the Joker is super slow.
How long is this movie anyway?
It's 2:35, so 2:40, something like that. But
I think it could have been an hour. I do feel like it was definitely.
It could be an hour more, yeah, in this case. But I'm just trying to counter-argument this idea. Well, everything has to happen fast, because even the Joker, and we might do a review on that as well, was super slow and people loved it. Obviously, it was around one character, so it was a lot easier. Maybe two characters. It was a lot easier to character develop. But I think that it seems like you're trying to say, well, you know, this movie is going with the times and so on. But the fact that it was just an incoherent mess and it had no choice to do what it had to do. I don't think this was a conscious decision. The fact is that Rian Johnson f***ed up, and then JJ had to fix all the... I assume JJ had an idea how all this would go, right? So he had a red lining to all this. But then Rian Johnson f***ed up, and now he had to tie the loose ends.
Right.
And so the reason the movie is like this is not because some conscious decision or going with the times and stuff like that. It's all because the production was... And for you to say something like that, it seems kind of like dishonest, doesn't it?
No, I think you're right. I'm saying I think that's also part of how they've taken this thing on, is just like, all right, it's even kind of in the script, this idea of like, you know, you're never ready. Things are never perfect. And from the perspective of an artist, and from the perspective of this as an artifact, I'm not saying that if it wasn't me, I would have made it 3 hours. I feel like there's stuff that they could have taken their time on more. anymore. It was going at breakneck speed. And I agree with you that it's not just a stylistic choice, it's also a product of the circumstances that produced it. But I think that's how art is. It's messy, and especially in the filmmaking. As a filmmaker myself, I'm sympathetic. Things often can't just be how perfect you want them to be. You have to figure out how to make it work with what you're given. And I think this dude was given a really hard project to try to do. And I think given the constraints of the circumstances, I think he pulled it off well.
I can agree that he did for what JJ does, although I think JJ is a horrible director.
One shot at the end where they were doing like the two shot where it's like you have one head on one side and one head on the other when they were like kissing and stuff at the end. And her head was in front of his head. It was a terrible shot. Besides that shot, I felt like most of it was pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
There's other parts too. Like, for example, I think a lot of people, they want to have time to feel the submersion into the perspectives. You want to lose yourself in some of the archetypes, but at the speed that they were going, it was harder for people to relax into those scenes, into those characters, and get development. Even the parts that I'm talking about later, like in the battle scenes where you have to cut between the A storyline and the B storyline and the C storyline and all that, it loses immersion. But if you think of it from an outside storytelling perspective, even some of the ways the shots are that don't feel submersive, they almost feel like chords to make you try to feel a particular emotion with the way that it's shot. When it zooms around them on the outside of the ship shooting or whatever, it's supposed to be more like they're out there doing this, they're battling, as opposed to making you really get into their perspective to where you have to feel what it's like in that moment. Some of those stylistic choices from like a director's perspective, even if they're not immersive, they kind of make sense to me. And I wonder how other people experience some of this stuff. I really do think that a lot of expectations you want it to be or what you expect it to be are going to change the way that you perceive the movie.
After I came out of the cinema, I called a friend of mine. He didn't watch it, but he wanted my opinion. And I said that JJ did a good job with what he had. So I'm not necessarily saying that within circumstances he got, and I heard he came to production late because he wasn't really planned. Originally it was Colin Trevorrow, but he saw the cluster, so he ran away. And given how much things JJ had to fix because of Rian Johnson, I agree that he did admirable job. And let's not talk about all the corporate pressures and toy selling and all those other things, but
yeah,
I can give him credit for that, sure. So I'm not necessarily even blaming it on JJ. I think the problem is because everything happens so fast, it had to happen. We agree on that, but it loses depth. So for me, it all still kind of felt flat and stereotypical. You're arguing that the same themes are almost, we can talk about whether movies need the same themes. I think that themes are basically the same in this movie as they were in previous ones. But it's a weird mix, you know. I can understand his situation. I can understand he was under pressure. So I can understand why he had to make choices he had to make. But even within that, I still think things could have been done a bit better than they were. I know.
Let's talk about some of those things too. Like,
we're gonna go into the details. I just want to say, I know that movie was never set up to be a masterpiece. Obviously, it was more like a damage control. But even within that damage control, I still think that he might have, would have. Maybe I'm wrong, but he could have done things a bit more better. But I can sort of understand where you're coming from in terms of why JJ had to do what he had to do.
Yeah.
I have here under my notes plot holes and general problems.
Start with the plot holes and general problems.
Okay, so this is not in chronological order. Another problem that I felt this movie had is it almost felt like sort of Indiana Jones and like a video game, because usually in a video game, so for instance the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, there's something in video game called the fetch quests. So a fetch quest is, oh, you need to get this item to get from point A to B. Those usually are the storylines in games, so game can bring a character from A to B. And basically this is the same thing. This is like a video game. So they were looking for the Sith holocron, but the location of the holocron was written on a dagger. So why and who would write this on some Sith dagger? It feels like it was a convenience put there so you can have some kind of purpose for the main characters to find the planet or whatever they were looking for, Senator Palpatine. So there was a lot of convenience.
The dagger was the wayfinder, man. That's how they found which part of the Death Star to go in.
Yeah, but does it really have to be one item? No, the dagger was to find a holocron to find, if I'm not mistaken, because there were two things. There were the dagger and the Sith holocron. My broader point here is that I think there could be easier and more efficient storylines to get characters from A to B than using the good old Indiana Jones kind of fetch quest. How did you feel about this item searching?
It didn't bother me. What would you have done differently? How would you have done it instead?
Maybe Rey felt something, or some character could tell her. Why wouldn't Luke be able to tell her? Maybe Luke would have like a bigger role here, and we're gonna go into characters, but there are plenty of ways that don't have to be objects. I would rather see Force or people or something totally different. I think objects is just way too obvious for me. It's just like the most basic screenwriting, although maybe for kids it's better to
I think it's interesting
sell the Sith holocron toy or something.
I think one of the things that they're trying to do in this movie too is to establish this dynamic between your friends having your back and being there for you and coming to the rescue and not forgetting about you, as well as knowing when to let you go off on your own adventure.
It's too dangerous. I need to go alone.
We're all in this till the end.
When they're going to be like, all right, we're coming with you. No, we're your friends. We're coming with you. And then when to be like, you know what, this part they have to do alone. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. I think maybe that was part of what was going on. I don't know if that exactly has to do with the fetch quest. Like you're saying, maybe they could have done it differently. But that was a vibe that I was getting off this thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't have there's nothing wrong with France having her back. Obviously, this again was this is the damage control part, because in the previous episode they kind of split up. But now J.J. Abrams was like, oh, well, let them be together. So
there's tons of damage control in this. Does that bother you?
Say. Yes.
Why? Don't you think that he has to do that stuff? Aren't you happy when he goes and he fixes a part that was messed up before and he's like, you know what? I'm going to make this work somehow.
Yeah, but not the extreme opposite. I think you should probably find the middle ground. Obviously, depends what you wanted. So he obviously didn't want to continue the story of Rian Johnson. So that's why he went to the other extreme. Maybe do something in between. But when we're talking about this specific part, when you say, so there was a part in the movie when Rey does walk off because she felt like Kylo or something that was on the, I think, desert planet, and Kylo was trying to kill her. Remember when there was a TIE fighter going for Rey, and then Rey jumps over and then hits the Kylo Ren's TIE fighter wing?
Yes.
And then that TIE fighter really is destroyed. And then Kylo just comes up without a scratch. It's like, first of all, I didn't know it was Kylo. I thought it was just some random stormtrooper attacking her, right? But then it was Kylo just unscathed, perfectly fine, walking towards her. And then they had that force
arm wrestling
with its spaceship where Chewbacca was supposed to be, which is again so weird. And then Rey, because she sort of got in touch with her dark side or something, and then she shot force lightning into the vehicle, and then vehicle kind of crashed, and we thought Chewie was dead or something. How did you feel about that part?
A couple things I feel about it. I don't mind the force arm wrestling. I don't like this idea that's embedded in this kind of false duality, like anger is bad. A lot of this stuff is a little bit green philosophy, and so you kind of have to be like, oh, okay. Like anger and fear are bad. Well, they can be bad. It's more about what you do with them, that you feel them. So, I mean, in terms of symbolism, I'm not 100% on board with it, but it's a good way to like set up this idea of her being a Palpatine or whatever like that.
The problem for me here is, remember the koans from the Sith and the Jedi?
Yes.
You were talking about, one of your videos.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually from the Knights of the Old Republic game, right?
Okay.
And the way I usually saw this dichotomy between Sith and the Jedi is like the Jedi are like these kind Christians who try to deny their sexuality and their dark side.
Right.
And the Sith are like this opposite of that, right?
They're passionate
anarchists, whatever you want to call them. Passionate communists. No, I'm just kidding about that. Passionate whatever. And I sort of thought that at this point, the idea is that maybe combining the two to see that there are good parts in both, exactly.
Yeah, that would have been great.
This is where I thought the trilogy was going, to find out that you need to be a balanced person, and what makes you strong is to have both sides kind of equally. Or
yeah, they're still playing into the light side thing. Part of why they want to do that is because they're not trying to really end this thing. Now that they know that this isn't actually the last version of this thing, that there will be future ones, whereas you and I might be like, okay, we're coming to this resolution point. They're like, no, we are going to extend this thing out for so long. This is just another chapter for another generation, and there will be more. But I agree, that would be a great place of resolution.
They could probably go further with what I had in mind. But there's another problem just with this scene. Okay, so I'm totally down with her using Force lightning unintentionally. That's totally fine with me. Obviously foreshadowing that she's a Palpatine. Spoiler alert for anybody. For me, I don't care about the arm wrestle. That's fine, sure. What I was bothered is how they handled Chewie. So for me, the idea was that Chewie was on that vehicle and that she accidentally killed him. I was thinking, maybe they're gonna go somewhere with this, right?
Yes.
Maybe that's gonna have a traumatic impact on her. Maybe she's gonna change whatever.
Yes.
But then 5 minutes later, it turns out Chewie was alive on the other Star Destroyer. So movie didn't even try to give us space to realize, oh my god, Chewie might be dead, right?
Yes.
5 minutes later, he was back alive. Why even put this plotline in? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I agree with you. I think this is one of the major dropped balls in the movie. If I would change anything about this movie, we would not know that Chewie was alive until maybe we find out later on the starship or whatever. Maybe they felt like if we waited like that we would already all have accepted his death already. But man, they really undercut it and popped that tension bubble very soon. And it undercuts the next thing that they try to do when they're like, we're doing this for Chewie. So it's like when you already know Chewie's alive, then there's no tension in the audience. We don't get to feel it with her again when she realizes that he's alive. So this is a problem, I would say. And maybe this is a part of the problem of trying to do it for kids.
Can't let kids be disappointed for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, otherwise it's too long. Maybe the tension for kids is a lot heavier and they need to quickly tell them it's okay, don't worry, Chewie's alive. Don't you really worry. Let us worry. Again, maybe that's more of an adult thing to be like, look, we can handle it.
And there's another thing. Wouldn't Rey feel if she killed him? That's kind of weird. And then also the way they explain it, well, there was just this other ship. We're like, what? You can just use, it was just some other ship. These smaller plot lines need to be a bit more or less convenient just to explain it away. Oh, it was another ship that was never shown. Maybe if there were like 3-4 ships shown or something. So bizarre way to kill Chewie for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't exactly know what purpose it all served.
Maybe to get her to not leave later. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like they were done and then you found out that Chewie was on that ship and so then they had to go to the ship. Maybe they were using it as a way to get her to go be up there and to go get involved in whatever was going on up there. But yeah, they could have handled the Chewie situation a lot more skillfully, I think. It's a tough one though. Like you're saying, trying to make this movie for so many different people, I think they could have handled it better.
We can agree on that. So then 3CPO then says that he knows the language on the dagger, right? But he can't translate it because it's in his programming. They had to go on that planet. I forgot the name. Clearly something like that.
I don't know, man.
The problem is because everything happening so fast, I already forgot a lot of the movie. I think I should have actually went watching it 2 times because there's so many things going on so fast. It's hard to maybe it is movie made for a few more watchings.
Yeah. I had that same experience too. We were talking about this first scene with the light speed jumps and I was talking about how I both didn't like it and also thought it was kind of a good metaphor for the movie. And he's like, yeah, there was some kind of blob type thing that gets on the ship with them. You see it's like, he's like, that's just a toy placement situation. And I'm like, what? I don't even remember that. He's like, you don't remember the blob thing in the openings? I'm like, no, I have no memory of that. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember it as well, but your kids did, and that's the important part.
Yeah, they're like, that cute little blob.
Let me just rehash what happened. So they went to this Kilos, whatever the planet is, and there they found Zori Bliss. Zori Bliss was that mask lady, if you remember. She stopped them. She had a mask, like a golden mask, and she hated Poe. We had some kind of Poe backstory that Poe was actually smuggler before he joined the Resistance.
She looks like a Daft Punk Power Ranger.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Something like that, yeah. And then they told the Poe backstory a bit, which is great. I mean, maybe it could be interesting to
He's
develop
a spice runner
in the future. He was similar to Han Solo. I think Finn and Poe were kind of like some combination of Han Solo or whatever.
Get your spice.
And they also then had some kind of love attraction. Like he said, can I kiss you? And then she said no. Here's another item that comes in. So basically they need to board the ship or something. And they can't do it because they don't have our right chip. And then Zori Bliss gives them, I don't know if you remember, a chip or a coin.
Yeah.
And this coin is specially designed. It's like a MasterCard to get into Empire ship, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's another convenient item, just like the dagger, the Sith holocron to get you to some place. So why are there so many items in this movie to get characters from A to B? I just feel like it's a very cheap way. I guess again it's more for kids, so it's easier for them to see this.
In
right?
this case, it's nice. It's like a symbolic boon. So if you think in the context of their relationship, through the whole thing, what it's about is she loves him, he loves her, they know they're not...
She hated him at the beginning.
Well...
And then 5 minutes after, she loves him again.
Love and hate are very closely related. If you have a past with someone like that and you really hate them, it's probably in part because you care about them and you love them. So maybe it was like she saw that he had changed his life and that he was doing good, and she wanted to encourage him and support him in the things that he was trying to do, and she sees the importance of his mission overall because she's doing the same thing, but she also knows that she doesn't want to be with him and that she doesn't trust him.
Yeah, why did he have to bring so many new characters into this Rush story? It's kind of weird. I mean, it's fine. I have nothing against Ori Bliss. She seems like a badass character on her own.
Yeah.
She seems like a Power Ranger kind of bounty hunteress.
I think it's because they're trying to do this thing at the end where they're painting this idea of you're not in it alone. When the time comes, if you're doing something important, if you're part of the revolution, they try to make you feel small, they try to make you feel alone. But even people who don't even necessarily totally agree with you personally or don't want to be with you personally or be your romantic love interest or whatever, they also care about this higher cause and they will come to the aid of that cause in the big picture.
That's why they came in The Last Jedi, right? They didn't. Spoiler.
They didn't come.
Nobody was there. That's the point. But now, in the third episode, and they all kind of changed their mind. Magically.
This is what I like about this episode too, though, is because I feel like in terms of philosophy, the last episode was all about undoing expectations, subverting expectations, and being like, no, it's actually...
unsubverting them back.
Yeah, so it's all... No, it's actually all meaningless. It's actually all pointless. Nobody's gonna come. You're stupid. You're dumb. And the Jedi is a mistake and all this kind of stuff. I agree with you that we could have come out the other side and found a point of synthesis. I like this theme of you're standing on the shoulders of the giants. You represent all the Jedi, not just yourself. All the voices of the past behind you. I can relate to this kind of stuff. As a person who's kind of a revolutionary, I feel like when you fight against me, you're fighting against Wilbur, you're fighting against Joseph Campbell, you're fighting against all these people who I've assimilated, not just fighting David.
Yeah, I totally agree with the theme.
Yeah.
That's totally fine with me. I think that's a great theme to go for. The problem is the way this was set up. It felt kind of fast, forced, and cheesy.
Yes.
So again, I have nothing against the theme you're talking about. But the problem is the whole narrative, the way it was shot, because the trilogy had no direction. It all kind of felt forced.
It felt forced.
JJ kind of set up this theme throughout first 2 episodes, right? Then obviously it would be a lot easier for us to digest this idea of Rey having all the voices of the Jedi within her, and she represents the whole of the Jedi lineage and so on. Super fine, great idea. The problem is because it was a damage control, it felt too fast and too cheesy. Although the theme, like you said, I actually think it's an interesting theme to explore because that's more like a meta-narrative theme. This is not like a 10 minutes established theme, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it would take some time to build such a theme, and that's like a trilogy kind of theme, not just like 5 minutes theme.
I guess so. A lot of the moves that they were doing in this, I liked those moves and they felt good to me, and I felt like it felt good in this world. So maybe I was just happy that these were the moves that they were making. And I feel a lot of people's criticisms about how they presented it or how they could have framed it or stretched it out, I feel like all that's true. I guess I'm content with at least these moves being made. If you were debating somebody in an argument, and even if they're not a really great communicator, if you can tell that they're honest and coming from a good perspective and that the moves that they're making are reasonable and that you like where they're going with it, you can kind of forgive a lot of the presentation part of it. You're just like, yeah, you got some good stuff in there. I'm liking that. Because the last movie, I was not liking where they were going with it. I was like, oh, this is bad. This is not the kind of stuff that I would necessarily want my kids to... This is not the mythology that I would want them to go to learn, to think. And I feel like even if it's damage control and a course correction, when she throws away her lightsaber and Luke catches it and he's like, that's a disrespectful way to treat a Jedi's weapon or whatever. I'm like, oh, thank you. What a great comment on this thing. And then he's like, you know what? I was wrong. The thing to do is not to come over here and be on this island and throw it all the way. You got to get involved. I'm just like, Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. He has her practicing and studying at the beginning. I'm like, yes, thank you. Thank you for doing this, because to me, this is a good course correction. This is a good way to fix some of the problems from the past one and set it right. And I'm glad that we went that way. I'm glad we went down that road, and Luke can be like, I was wrong. I think that's great. To have Luke say that he was wrong, the Master Jedi go and like be off in isolation and be a grumpy old bastard, and for him to come back and be like, I was wrong, that's beautiful. I'm glad.
I guess you can sort of say, yeah, that's a lot better way to fix Luke, but the problem is then you make one character arc just to, kind of fix it in the next 5 minutes, saying, oh, sorry, I was wrong. Yeah, whatever. Let's just continue with the story. Thank you, Rey. Bye. Again, it all kind of felt cheap and fast. I agree. It probably is a step in the right direction, because Rian Johnson, when he finished The Last Jedi, it was all kind of weirdly melancholy. I mean, it was optimistically shot, but in terms of where the
pessimistic and nihilistic. I was thinking of this overarching theme of the idea, how at the very end you have, what's his dude, Lando Calrissian turn to the other girl being like, well, like, you don't know where you're from? Oh, we're going to find out. There's this theme through the thing of, on the light side, whether you think of it in like a more spiritual way or like the rebellion side, if you think of it in a more political way. But on this side of things, we honor and value the individual and uniqueness and the journey of finding yourself. She does it with that robot. No, she doesn't do it with the robot. Oh, excuse me. She has that relationship with the robot that gets fixed. It's like she goes to touch it and it's like, oh, thank you. She's like, oh, you've been hurt. And she's like, well, don't worry, you're with us now. So there's this kind of theme that goes throughout it of, on this side, we explore our past, we explore our origins, and there's this really nice moment at the end where she's asked what her last name is, and she decides that her last name is Skywalker. She chooses who she is. So there's like this nice poetry of both trying to discover your origins. Don't be afraid of who you really are. This is the big theme of the movie. Embrace your past, explore your origins, but also know who you really are in your heart and what you really want to do, and be true to your nature. And you can name yourself and claim yourself. You're not going to be a victim to your past. You can say all these themes are rushed, and that's probably true. I don't disagree with that. But to me, in terms of the interweaving of themes and mythology, I'm pretty happy with how this thing turned out. I think there's some beautiful points in here, and there's a lot of meaning to be found, even if it's at breakneck speed. I was able to catch a lot of it and really appreciate it. There was a couple points in this thing where I was truly moved. The redemption story of Kylo Ren when he sees his father, and yeah, at that moment, I felt it. I was in it.
Yeah, most people seem to agree that Kylo Ren's character arc, because most people disagree with Rey because she was like a Mary Sue through the whole, although she does lose, and this is one of the okay parts I actually wrote down, she does lose with the Kylo battle.
Yeah, on the Death Star.
And then kind of Leia stops him.
Yes.
And then his father shows up.
Yes.
When it was like recreation from The Force Awakens.
And I kind of felt like
embrace his father. I felt that was okay.
I also felt like that was him kind of trying to fix this Mary Sue stuff. He was trying to really push away from that, and you kind of see he doesn't want to kill her. She's fighting super passionately, and he can pretty easily just block her stuff, and she's flailing around a little bit. She wins, but only, like you say, because he was distracted. It was kind of nice too, also, this idea of the mother coming in and distracting him so that way her adopted daughter could do the right thing, and then also the father comes for the redemption.
I really liked the part where they dealt with the whole grabbing the hand situation, because that was one of the things that I was really concerned with, like, dang, why didn't she take his hand? And in this one she said, I wanted to take your hand, but I wanted to take Ben's hand. I really thought that was beautiful. I like that. It felt like a good resolution. Like, it wasn't just that she was afraid or didn't or whatever. Like, she wanted to. I'm glad we commented on that.
Even if it's rushed, the poetry is all there and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think if that was extended, and like you said before, I think all these are great themes, but I think what most people have problem is not so much the themes. I think themes are great. I think JJ sort of understands the themes really well. The problem is just because it was so rushed and so fast with so many plot holes that I think they feel forced because of it. Even though the themes as themselves, shot correctly, were great. And I totally agree with everything you're saying here. Leia stopping him, embracing his father's side and becoming a good person Johnson, that's super great. Kylo Ren in this trilogy is probably the shining point, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Because Rey doesn't really have such an arc. I mean, she does have an arc. The funny part about Rey, this trilogy is not so much about the story in the trilogy itself, as much it is a story outside of the trilogy, of what's happening behind the scenes. So what kind of Rian Johnson made was a movie, but the main story is not the movie itself, but behind the scenes stuff about the movie. So it's kind of weird irony if you think about it. What I was trying to say is that even with Rey, right, she said like, nobody understands me, blah blah blah. I think that was more like a fuck you to the audience as well. Maybe not in a bad way, it's just because nobody does understand her, and now we realize she's a Palpatine. Maybe JJ's thought that maybe we're gonna have a more, I don't know, feelings for her because she's a Palpatine.
It's amazing how much of the stuff is meta commentary, where it's like there's words in these characters' mouth where you can almost hear the director commenting and explaining.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
I guess this is some of the stuff that people don't like about it, but I kind of think it's sort of clever sometimes when you can do that, when you can use the characters in the thing to comment on it. Oh, they fly now. Yeah, they fly now.
They fly now.
They fly now! They fly now!
They fly now. I'm like, okay. Yeah, they fly now, you know, like, and you know what? I think that's good because going forward in future Star Wars, I'm okay with seeing more power as technology changes and times advance, that we want to see more new things come through. This is a way to set that up.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Here's the problem with the fly now part, right? We can see them flying. This is basically saying every part, oh, we're walking now, oh, we're eating now, oh, we're talking now. It doesn't seem like, okay, I understand maybe they were trying with this specific scene, they fly now, kind of show the chemistry between the characters. That's fine, I don't care. But some people hate that characters dictate what you have to think instead of showing them what you want to think. I'm totally fine with the fly now, by the way, I don't care, but some people don't really like that kind of style of dialogue because they feel like they're forcing down the throat the obvious, as if us as the audience are stupid and we don't see that they're flying, right?
I guess I'm more sympathetic to feeling like I buy it. Like, if you're like...
No, I did buy it though. If
you're in that position and you're already feeling like you and your few people are up against this huge behemoth, and you're upgrading your skills, but they're also upgrading as well. And you're like, they fly now? God, this wasn't hard enough. That's one of the things I like about the overarching theme of this whole movie too, is they're building these giant battles, fleets of huge military power. And there's just a few of us, and we're all just individuals with our own unique power, and we feel so small. And it's this huge uphill battle. Instead of trying to fight the big fleet on their level to try to like meet them and defeat all of their huge army, these Jedi and these people, they always try to go to the heart of the problem, to the very source, and deal with it at the source. I think that there's some great poetry in there. I mean, again, this might just be appreciating Star Wars as a symbol set.
All these symbol sets and themes you're talking about are great themes. I just feel like they weren't conveyed in the movie, right? I doubt anybody was like, oh, we feel for Rey, because Rey was established so strong in the first two episodes, right? Maybe with other guys, but with Rey, maybe in this movie a bit more, but with the first two movies, you didn't feel like Rey was weak. It wasn't like her against the world. It was like, oh, she's just some unstoppable character, nothing stops her. In this episode, I think JJ did a better job. It did feel kind of odd or more stacked against them. I think, again, the problem is more the damage, not the themes. The themes are great, and I agree with them. Just the problem is how they were delivered based on the first two movies, and this is where I feel the biggest wound is.
Yeah,
right?
And I agree with you. I think that depending on what kind of perspective you take or what kind of hat you wear when you look at this movie, you're going to have different experiences. If you go into it with a production hat on and you're like, okay, well, let's just judge this movie, or even if you're just like, let's judge this movie in the light of all of Star Wars as a Star Wars fan, just in the context of movies, you're going to have a different experience than if you're thinking of it like, okay, can JJ pull it off? That's another perspective on it. Or if you go into it with the mythology hat. Like, will they fix the symbolism? Will they get it right? Will they play the right themes? Versus like if you go into it from the perspective of a kid who's just like, is this going to be fun? Is it going to be a fun ride to go on? There's so many different perspectives, and I'm not saying any of them is wrong, but as a person who makes art myself and who knows how hard it is to make a movie or a video, it's always a compromise. It's always got a very human element to it where it's like very limited by whatever you have to work with, and in the context of just instead of wanting something to be a certain kind of way, like can you appreciate it just as it is and find the good stuff in it, and even appreciate some of the negative things as human elements and be like, yeah, and they still pulled it off. I guess being an artist who knows how hard it is to make art and to deal with critics and to make everyone happy. JJ is not making a Star Wars movie that he wants to make. He's having to make all these people happy. He's got to make Disney happy. It's got to work, not just in the context of all the Star Wars movies that have come before, but all the Star Wars movies they're going to make in the future. It's got to play these nostalgia points. It's got to rhyme in this kind of way. He's got to be true to the world. He's got to try to make so many people happy. The project of trying to do this thing is crazy and daunting. I would imagine that anybody who tried to do it would be extremely criticized, no matter what they did.
It all comes down to the production, right? Mandalorian is being accepted quite well. Obviously, it's a TV show. They have more time to prepare and stuff. 2 years for a movie is way too short for something like Star Wars. I think the first were every 3 years, the prequels and the originals, if I'm not mistaken. I totally agree with everything you're saying within the context JJ had to work with. He did his best he could based on the material and limitations he had.
I agree with your criticisms of the production. I do feel it's rushed. That makes it feel shallow, and they end up overcutting the points that they want to make and the emotional resonance that it could have if they would have taken their time more. I do think it feels like a ride. I feel like there's a lot of parts that feel very poppy and just like quick throwing you through it. It feels very surface, very thin, and to some extent it rings hollow. And I feel like you're right. That is a production note that is valid and true.
They also did handle well Leia based on the fact that she's dead, right? So she went there. Some people didn't like that. I think it was fine based on the material they had. How did you feel they handled Leia?
I liked it. I like that we got to see that Leia went through some Jedi training. I think that's cool. I feel like that's a fixing of the story a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that she got to have both the weapons of her masters, her basically adopted mother and father, and that she went into battle with both of their sabers. I think that's beautiful poetry. I liked that she gave her life for her daughter and sacrificed her son. This is great poetry as well. I guess that's why I was so happy with it, is because I thought it was fun and cheesy and it was doing all the things. Yeah, it was moving through it at breakneck speed, but the moves that it were making, I was happy with for the most part, with a few cheesy missteps, poppy things in there, but I've kind of just shrugged my shoulders on those parts and be like, of course, it's Disney. So it didn't bother me that much.
I agree with Leia. I think they handled her okay based on the fact that she's dead. And also they didn't use Rose Tico all that much. Do you remember Rose from The Last Jedi?
Oh, Rose, yeah.
Asian lady, yeah.
I kind of like that.
She was just in the background, kind of.
I kind of like that thematically too, because I think the story of Poe's love interest and Finn's love interest is good. A lot of what's going on in this movie are these two people coming at a virtue from opposite sides, right? So you have Rey and Kylo, and here with the love situation, you have Poe and Finn. Poe has got the situation where he has this love interest from the past. He probably loves her, but he knows that he has to love her from afar. It's like someone he might want to be with, but can't be with. It's like messed up. So he's like, okay, I'm glad that you're doing well. Have a good life. And then from the other side, I feel like you get to feel like what it's like to be on the other side of that, where it's like she probably likes him, but he likes Rey, which is what seems to be implied in this thing. And so,
Finn?
Finn.
You're talking about Finn, okay.
Yeah. Finn likes Rey, and so he's gonna tell her, but he never gets to, so it's implied, and I kind of like that we never see how that concludes.
Well, the problem is that Rey likes people who destroy stuff. Bad boys.
Rey likes the bad boys.
Swollen bad boys.
Yeah. Also, that idea of now there's another love triangle tension between the guy who's on your side and who's had your back and who's been your friend the whole time in this Kylo thing. That works well. And you also get to see at the end when he comes back and everybody's celebrating. He sees her over there celebrating. celebrating. And he's like, yeah, I'm glad you're happy, but I don't really want to go over there with you. They're both on different sides of that situation, Poe and Finn. And so there's a kind of nice two sides to the story kind of poetic vibe there. I'm good with that.
The way I remember is they didn't really explore. So the Finn and Rose, they didn't really go into it, right? Rose was barely present. But then he found that other chick who was riding a horse.
Right.
And she also used to be a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
So they were adopted as they were children, and then they all kind of felt it was wrong. So I was assuming that he was maybe exploring that narrative, so Finn would maybe fall in love with that stormtrooper because they had
maybe
like
so.
similar kind of thing.
I also like the fact that some people come and go out of your story. They might seem like an important figure at one point, or like they could be something, but, you know, long term, they don't really stick around. I think that's kind of how life is a little bit, you know? People come and they seem real passionate and they hang around for a while, but they don't stick around long term. So I'm kind of okay with that, having some of these characters fade into the background a little bit and focusing on some other stuff, because that's just how life is. I think a lot of these things are how life is, like the criticisms like that, like the criticism like, these characters faded to the background, or these are minor characters, or like we're moving at breakneck speed and we don't have time to process. To me, like, yeah, that's how life is. Maybe it's unintentional and maybe it's subconscious, but even those negative things, I can find symbolic, meaningful value in them because they do relate to this idea of the struggle and being in it and being the one having to deal with all this stuff. To me, even those negative parts can hold good metaphorical lessons about life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so. Like I said, it's not the themes, it's the way they are presented, and we see these themes because of damage control, not because it was all planned out. So that's why I don't think they had an impact as they would if they were all controlled in a way that was, I mean, they were presented in a right kind of way.
But I think that's how mythology is too, is what I'm saying. Like, I think that it's kind of just like a product of circumstance, and even those...
That's how rushed capitalistic Hollywood production is.
Even that has its symbolic meaning, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Even if it's unconscious, even if it's like, well, yeah, but they didn't mean for it to be like that. It's like, yeah, but it's still right there, and I'm finding value in it. So I guess it's a con, but it speaks to the project in a way, so it doesn't bother me, I guess.
So how did you feel, because Snoke was killed in first half of the movie, right? So they had this idea that Emperor was behind it all, Palpatine, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel Palpatine being brought up into third episode? Obviously, I think originally JJ had this idea for Snoke, not Palpatine. Maybe he would say that Snoke was controlling Palpatine. How did you feel about taking a villain, which they didn't explain how he survived that fall from the Death Star from the episode 6. Again, damage control, extremely cheesy for me, forced in because they didn't have a credible character. How did you feel about Palpatine?
I guess I'm fine with it. I think there are things that aren't good about it, where you just see the cloned versions of the dude. I agree with you that it feels kind of rushed and forced. It's like, here's how it works. It's like this. And then you have all those Sith, like a whole stadium full of them.
The hell was
and
that?
Like all this fleet. You have all this stuff and it just seems like it comes from nowhere. It's like, why was all this stuff here? Like,
that's the problem, exactly.
I think there's
because
a lot of...
it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't have any impact, and that's why it feels cheesy and fast and forced, and that's why people didn't feel it.
Yeah,
Force was forced. That's the problem.
You quit forcing the Force.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a bunch of cheesy things in there, and it does feel forced. And it's interesting, too. It goes to kind of like a transhuman type of place or something, like this idea of the unnatural things that they're doing on the dark side. Like, that feels green, like, oh, we don't like GMOs. Let's stay human. Don't become transhuman. It's like kind of symbolically painting a lot of that stuff with the dark side. That feels like green kind of attacking progressive orange a little bit. Did you get that feeling at all?
Yeah, obviously you can find these green themes of relativism and stuff like that.
I'm talking about being anti-transhuman, or the idea that you could use technology to do things that are unnatural or whatever.
Yeah, I just kind of felt like it was like an orangey checklist approach. Obviously there were green themes in it, but the way the movie felt is like a checklist approach. So these are all the check marks. Let's rush them in and finish them as fast as we can. But in terms of themes and stories within themselves, I'm sure, we can find one.
You're very much wearing your production hat when you're criticizing this movie. You're like, I want to see...
I'm not against your themes.
I
mean,
I'm against the production and the way they were presented. That's my problem. and that's
I
why I'm
agree
not
with
gonna-
you about that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I definitely do. Like I brought up the problems with how
See, the problem is
just
that
bringing all these
anybody-
things in without any real deep explanation or how it
To
really
me,
fits.
it seems like you're almost every bad movie somebody makes, they can bring you on, right, to justify, but there are these themes. Sure, those themes might not be developed and so on.
I hated the last movie because
So you
I
can
didn't
be
like the themes.
I can play the same card with you and say, well, yeah, but it was different because Luke was pessimistic and this is new spin on the whole thing. And why would you be against that? Is something against the stereotypes?
Well, now
that
I
you were
think it works
expecting?
better. So with these new corrections, so I'm not as mad at it now. But
right, but I can just as well go to Last Jedi and bring all the same things you're saying now, except flip them and say, yeah, but there's mythology there, the despair, the nihilism. I think Rian Johnson did a great job subverting our expectation and showing that some characters sometimes can lose, and Luke was a loser.
I think
I can always play the same card game.
It's all come
opposite way,
I think it's all come together. I think it kind of works. Yeah, even the second movie now, it's part of the canon. That's what it is. And it works. Like if I had to rate the trilogies in the order in which I like them, I like the first trilogies the best. I like these new Disney ones the second best, and I like the prequels the worst.
Well, I would go, I like the originals the best, the prequels the second, and this mess the third.
Okay.
Yeah, because even though prequels were bad, they at least had some kind of vision. It was Lucas against himself, basically. But here in the Disney, it was like JJ setting up something, and then Rian Johnson's like, screw that, I'm doing my own thing. And then JJ came back and like, well, f- you, I'm doing the original thing I wanted to do anyway. So he's like, let me repair the Kylo Ren's helmet, whatever that was for. Let me just repair everything. Oh, Lucas just said he was wrong. I'm sorry. I was there on a planet for no reason. I was wrong. Sorry, Ray. Just continue with your story.
It's a little bit,
they were showing
it's a little bit bipolar and ADD, isn't it?
It had no direction because of Kathleen Kennedy, probably, who was the main producer. So
yeah.
The
helmet thing.
I hear you over there talking trash about my helmet. You think I'm cheesy and lame, right?
He like strangles them. He's like,
shut up.
I thought that's funny. Because, again, symbolically, we all do cheesy, dumb things like this, and we're like, no, this is how I express myself. Shut up. You know what I mean? Like, I bet a lot of people look at me in this kind of cheesy way, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Look at you with your hat and your thing, and you look like a child.
But in this context, it almost feels like it was a lightsaber between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, and like Kathleen Kennedy, the main producer, was like behind it all. For me, the main villain of this story was not Palpatine, it was basically the production team with Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah, she should probably be fired immediately and find somebody who's a lot more competent with steering Star Wars into the right direction.
I agree with you. I think this whole approach that they took with it was a postmodern go with the flow show. But in terms of now not just thinking of it as these movies, but thinking of it as a passing of the torch. Now this goes from one man's vision to public domain, worldwide mythology. I think it's an expression of the zeitgeist for better and for worse. I guess in that way, I'm like kind of okay with it being this way. Maybe what will happen next time is that they will learn from the mistakes that they made on this trilogy, and they'll make a new trilogy that's planned for the next generation.
I actually do have hunch that this is the way. I think they will probably find a more competent people, and maybe some people think that it should be the Knights of the Old Republic era, and we can go into that. I don't know if you're familiar. There are actually these incredible games, the Knights of the Old Republic, which happened like 5,000-6,000 years before these movies did, right?
Yeah.
And it also has some great stories, and there were great developers who understood the Star Wars lore super well, great writers, and there were gaming writers. But they knew the Star Wars lore amazingly well, and that's why both Knights of the Old Republic first and Knights of the Old Republic second, the Sith Lords, I think is the title.
Yeah.
They were both an amazing masterpieces of Star Wars storytelling. Masterpieces.
Why did you do such a thing? Such kindnesses will mean nothing. His path is set. Giving him what he has not earned is like pouring sand into his hands. And would that be a kindness? What if by surviving another day he brings a greater darkness upon another? The Force binds all things. The slightest push, the smallest touch, sends echoes throughout life. Even an act of kindness may have more severe repercussions than you know or can see. By giving him something he has not earned, perhaps all you have helped him become is a target. Seeing another elevated often brings the eyes of others who suffer, and perhaps in the end, all you have wrought is more pain. And that is my lesson to you. Be careful of charity and kindness, lest you do more harm with open hands than with a clenched fist. Use your power, but in its proper place.
A lot better than any of the we had here today.
Goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
I wish you knew the stories. They are a lot better, and it's a shame because I know there's talent out there that knows how to do Star Wars right. Even this Jedi Fallen Order game, Star Wars done right.
Let me ask you
there
this.
are competent people here.
Do you think...
Just not for the main movies.
Okay,
Yeah.
but do you think that big picture, in terms of the overall mythology going into the future of Star Wars, that this Star Wars trilogy for this generation messes up Star Wars?
I wouldn't necessarily say yes. I mean, it depends how deep you know the lore. Obviously, there was a lot of extended universe that happened that Disney throw away. I mean, they are borrowing parts that they feel are great. But Star Wars is a lot huger than just the originals and the prequels, right?
Yeah.
Prequels, I think, did a great job expanding the universe. But for instance, there was another... Remember in the episode 3 when Palpatine was talking about Dark Plagueis the Wise?
I think so.
And then he sort of said that he killed him in his sleep. Palpatine killed his master. So Darth Plagueis was basically what we are in Integral Theory. He was basically like a scientist. He was more a materialistic version of a Sith. And he was exploring the midichlorians from a scientific standpoint and exploring new force powers and how he would extend life and stuff like that. So that's a great, interesting direction you can take a force, making it maybe more materialistic, more scientific, and maybe kind of combination between mystery and science. So idealistic, materialistic worldview. The whole idea of Darth Plagueis was he was like a Sith scientist, and his scientific exploration of cloning and a lot of stuff he did were towards understanding the Force better. And from that kind of way, you can explore and extend the Force. So we know lightning is possible, we know that Force push, pull, all the basic stuff. But in order to present Force in a new way, so to kind of upgrade the Force, you need to have a reason to do it. You can't just have, oh, here's a Deus Ex Machina Force, teleportation. No, this is not how it works.
That's not how the Force works.
And this is something I also said before, Force is also a character, right?
Yes.
Just like any character. And you can't just throw in these new forces for the last movie so your story is coherent. The new abilities. Force object teleportation. So at some point Kylo took an object from Rey,
Yeah.
and they put it into CSI scan and they knew where Rey was.
Yeah.
Again, you need to build up. You can't just, oh, let's just throw this in so Kylo can find Rey. Why doesn't he just feel where he is? Now, obviously, the idea of how they explain this is because they are like Force-linked twins or something. And this is something Palpatine said, I don't know if you remember at the end of the movie, where he took the Force essence away from them and they both fell unconscious. You remember that
Yes.
part? It wasn't Force lightning. It was like Force taking somebody's essence, whatever you want to call it. Force drain.
Force drain.
Yeah, this is actually a Force called in the Knights of the Old Republic. So again, all these things are great. I think Force and Force abilities should be expanded, but I think it needs time. What I would do if I was a producer, I would make a new Star Wars trilogy, for instance, in a, I don't know, whatever era, maybe in time when Darth Plagueis was alive, and he would do his science experiments, and then I would slowly build up. Let's say he figured out something new, and this is how I would slowly introduce Force drain or whatever Force you want to put in. Force heal, for instance.
Yeah.
So you had Force object teleportation. That was never seen before in Star Wars.
Right.
Then you have Force heal. Force heal was in the extended universe, I think, and also it was in the games. So I'm fine with Force heal. I just think that she should probably learn it a bit more. But okay, I'm sort of okay with Force heal, I guess. But even that, then we have some other problem. Lightspeed skipping. I know you said, oh, it was like setting a tone.
Yeah, I don't like it as a thing. I'll give you that.
Yeah, what are the odds
I
of
do
him
not like that.
skipping to a freaking planet with some warm monster in front of him?
Yeah.
99% is space.
That
How
is
can you
crazy.
force skip in some weird good CG location? Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
That's
both.
stupid.
I think it's both stupid in the Star Wars world, and it's also an interesting way to talk about the way that you're going to experience the movie and setting the tone. I think it's both.
Exactly. Then we have another one, Rise from Death. So remember when Kylo then saved Rey? I'm totally down with this. But the problem is you gotta learn, right? So again, what I would do...
Like,
you
where do
gotta
these come
make
from, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So
How do you just know? How are we setting these things up?
that's why you can't do it so fast. It feels forced. The themes are great. It's just way too fast.
Quit forcing the Force. That's what it comes down to.
So they do have an explanation that they are like this rare Force links.
Yeah.
I don't know why they are these Force links, but they sort of have an excuse why they both have these powers and so on. But I think that's just a very lazy excuse. Again, if they did that from episode 7 to now, slowly building up, learning new powers and slowly, not just showing them, because now they're showing them so fast, it's all Deus Ex Machina. It's not like, oh, this was earned. You need to earn the power. The character needs to earn the power, not just, oh, now she can heal.
We want to see her do little bits of healing before she can just heal.
They show her on the snake.
Right.
But I'm just
but that's not enough.
Just in general.
Because how does she already know that? Yeah.
No, the funny thing is, now you haven't watched Mandalorian, right?
No.
They threw in the episode 7 of Mandalorian where Baby Yoda heals a wound.
Okay.
So it was almost like they put that in fast so the audience will be, oh yeah, that's a typical thing.
That's a thing, yeah.
But the audience already... No, they played the games. It was in all the games. It was all the Knight Republic games. So I don't mind the Force heal.
Okay.
I just think it should be earned more.
I want to go back, though, and touch on this metachlorian science kind of idea that you have, because I know for a lot of people, when they introduced this metachlorian idea that some people have more metachlorian than others, that a lot of people saw that as a bad idea. And we kind of have this more idea, or at least it seems like maybe we have this idea that everybody can tap into the Force, and if you train in the Force, that you can have access to it. I guess I like the idea that it's accessible to everyone more than I like the idea of it being like you having some biological predisposition to be special in the Force or something.
But then you have another problem. And this is something Rian Johnson was doing at the end of The Last Jedi. See, the problem is that if everybody has it, it's not special anymore. So what are you gonna have? The whole planet just Force pushing each other around? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure, everybody have like the basics of it, right? So let's say we are all sort of made with Force, whatever, right?
Okay.
But you still need to have degrees, because
so it's
if
both
everybody
and.
has equal Force, it's boring.
Gotcha. Everyone has some basic aspect to the Force, but some people are especially gifted in the Force through biology.
I don't think it's necessarily biology. I mean, I am totally open for mystic things.
Isn't that why we have the Skywalker family and the Palpatine family having such special biological...
Well, but if everybody was like that, then why is their story any more important than any other? You know what I mean?
Yes. Okay, so
I mean,
that makes sense to me.
That's what makes them special,
So it is both, though. Like, regular people can somewhat tap into it, but then some people, through their bloodline, through their biology, just have extra access to it.
Yeah, but even they had to develop it. So when you play the Knights of the Old Republic, you go in this journey. The idea is that you learn, you go through the training, and you slowly develop your character. So that's an RPG game. So you slowly develop, giving him more Force points. You learn with the character. So you feel like you earn doing lots of quests, going on different adventures, and you slowly earn all these powers, and then in the end you are super powerful, right?
But you would earn greater control, not greater access, right?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of both, right? I think some people can have less control. I mean, all can have it, but I think there probably needs to be varying degrees of control and access.
Okay.
And again, we can go into details.
Well, that's interesting. That actually makes a lot more sense to me after thinking about it. It makes more sense when you put these different pieces in play and you really think about the nature versus nurture of it. That's interesting.
Well, yeah, and I am probably a bit more educated on Star Wars meta narrative, not just in terms of the movies.
The extended universe of the mythology and all that.
And I feel like I'm sort of knowledgeable enough to know where are the boundaries of how far you can take the Force. I think Force object teleportation is not a good idea, even if it's explained because of they have this rare link, because there are so many plot convenience you can save. There's just some forces you can have because they mess up the whole story.
They mess up the world. It's a little too much.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can save almost anything out of this Force object teleportation thing.
Yeah, because it also makes it more risky. In some of the parts before where they're talking through this faraway distance, it still seems safe, because you know he can't reach through and grab you and hurt you or whatever. But now, that whole time, he could have just pulled out a sword and stabbed you through the Force. If that was a thing that you could do, that's too much power.
Yeah, exactly. And because too much power can destroy a lot of things in the previous episodes, right?
These evil people could just show up to wherever they wanted to kill the person and then kill them and then...
Touching the lightsaber, right? Why doesn't just Force Ghost Luke just go fight Palpatine? He can just catch the lightsaber. You gotta be really careful. The reason why Star Wars is successful, because it has a very explicit rules about how Force should work. Now, one could argue that at the beginning the Force was really sterile, so you had lightning, little push, pull, the basics, right? And we can expand on that. I'm totally fine with expanding the Force, but you want to do it slowly, methodologically, and with the right storytelling. And here, because everything like the teleportation, heal, rise from death, this rare Force link Kylo and Rey had, it's all in so fast, it feels cheesy. It's not the themes, it's the story building in the way these themes are built together, right?
Yeah.
And
well, it's both.
Unfortunately, they don't work because they weren't built properly. The hero journey needs to feel earned, and it's not earned. And that's why people don't like Rey. And that's why I don't think people like this whole saga, especially this part, because a lot of these Force powers were not earned.
Well, I think it's not necessarily so much that the Force powers are earned with her, as much as it is that her arc is in learning to define herself and to face her past and to face her fears. I guess I still feel like it's kind of in there, but like, yeah, when it comes to Force powers and strength and stuff like that. But then, based on what we were just saying, she comes from a long line of these powerful people, so she has extra midichlorians, so it seems like she has extra access.
That was a good explanation. So, because she actually beat Kylo Ren in the first episode, if you remember, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they did a good job saying she's a Palpatine, because now, obviously, Palpatine is one of the strongest villains.
I feel like he did a really good job fixing it, at least thematically. Now, I agree with you in terms of speed, and the presentation problems are definitely there. It could have been presented and set up, and we could have taken more time with it, and it would have been really good. I'm more of like a meaning person than I am in how you present it person. I think both are important.
I'm actually probably more the opposite. Maybe that's why we do have like a different takes, because I am a super OCD when it comes to world building. I want to make sure that everything in a movie is super logical. It makes total 100% sense.
Well, man, whenever I am making a movie, I want to put you on the peer review team because I want to hear all your criticisms about it. I think it's really hard. There's so many things that you have to figure out the level of abstraction and how to work with it and what's enough and what's too much. Like, man, that's why I'm saying, all things considered, I think it was probably a crazy, ridiculous project to try to pull off this last one, especially after what had been done in the first ones. I'm actually pretty impressed with his ability to weave all this stuff back together and to try to balance all these different people he's got to please.
With all due respect, Master, is he not the chosen one? Is he not to bring balance to the Force?
The dark side clouds everything.
And to do the thing in a way that it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be. As a director, trying to do this project, I'm pretty impressed with his ability to mostly pull it off.
So let's go back to the storyline. I also think that C-3PO as a character was handled okay.
I've just about had enough of you. I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. Don't get technical with me. This time you have gone too far. What are you talking about? I don't like you either.
I don't know if you remember, but the basic idea is he could read the dagger, but he couldn't translate it because it was forbidden for him, and then they had to go to that planet, and then they wiped out his memory, and that tiny little creature did the operation.
Yeah.
And then he was able to speak. I think it was a good way to use robots, basically, for a larger narrative.
Did you hear that? I see your point, sir.
So I'm fine with C-3PO and R2-D2 having his backup file, whatever, sure.
And I like the idea of never underestimate a droid.
Yeah, that's a great wise word from Leia. In terms of Lando, I just think he was like a nice kind of grandpa, really happy. There was nothing to his character. He was just really sweet and nice kind of grandpa you never had, something like that. That's how I felt Lando was.
He seems very friendly.
Yes. Very friendly.
Hello, what have we here? Welcome, I'm Lando Calrissian. I'm the administrator of this facility.
How did you feel, Lando?
A lot of people probably feel like they're just shoehorning in these people for nostalgia reasons, and I'm kind of okay with that. I feel like it's sort of part of the world. It's a little bit cheesy and whatever, but it's also kind of nice. It plays into this theme of the generations. One generation hands it off to the next, but they're still involved. I really like this generations theme through the movie because I think it's going going to be part of how Star Wars transitions into the future of making this like ongoing mythology, different heroes for different generations.
I have nothing against cameos here and there. I mean, it's not like he was ruling. He was just like there being nice, which is fine. We don't want to see Lando in the 70s and 80s. This is where Lando was at his prime.
Hello, what have we here?
Yeah, I mean...
Snorting the Star Wars coke.
Get your spice. Hey, everybody.
But now he's like a chill dude.
I'm high as right now.
This is Lando past his prime, let's put it that way. But it's fine. Turns out that General Hux was a traitor. Do you remember that part? When he said to them, I'm gonna execute them. And then he executed the stormtroopers. And it turns out General Hux was a spy. He helped Rey and others because he wanted Kylo to die or something. Or to not succeed. Do you remember that part? How did you feel Hux was handled?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of these characters, the criticisms that you make about the speed at which we move through them, it feels just kind of quick and cheesy and there's no build up and it's kind of just like a throwaway thing. That's definitely something I would feel with this. But in terms of just general archetypes, yeah, it makes sense that the dark side is going to have people on the inside who will sabotage the leader, not because they want to be on the side of the light side, but because they have their own egoic pecking order and like personal issues. I guess it's like within the machine, everybody's clamoring for the top position. He's probably feeling like Kylo doesn't deserve it and he's just a spoiled little cheesy little... And he's like, I'm really mean. I'm the redheaded little guy who's come up and had to deal with a whole bunch of BS. This little spoiled brat keeps treating me badly.
Obviously, we already got the fasting criticism. We are past that. But based on what he had to work, I think it's okay. I mean, we know he hated him even from the previous episode. He just like treated him like a child. At least they gave him some kind of arc, you know?
Yeah, it's rushed, but it's fine.
So there were another few interesting characters that didn't really have a lot of exposure. That was the undeveloped Knights of Ren. If you remember the 7th episode where Rey had this vision and there were some Knights of Ren and there was raining. So the Knights of Ren were like, I don't know, some accomplices of Kylo Ren or something. Those black guards he had.
The dudes who were in all red. Yeah, I mean, that's...
No, those are different.
Oh, those are different?
Guards. Those are different. Yeah, those are not the same people.
Okay. Well, yeah, clearly we've dropped that thread.
You probably don't remember because Rian Johnson totally dropped them in the 2nd episode, right? And now because JJ wanted to bring them back, so he did for a while. Obviously, we don't know a lot about them, but Kylo Ren was like this dark clan leader, and then those Knights of Ren.
Yeah, the black armored guys.
Black armored guys. And they, when Kylo tried to help Rey, they kind of confronted him, if you remember that part, and then Rey transported one of the lightsabers because she brought 2 lightsabers with her to encounter Palpatine, and she teleported one of the lightsabers to Ben,
right,
so Ben could kill the Knights of Ren. It's a good use of the new powers they have. It's a good use for her to transport and help Ben kill the guards, right? So I guess that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, but they were unfortunately undeveloped, so we don't know a lot about them, but they were all handled okay.
I like this idea of like, maybe I already said this, but going into the future generations might even have better access and control of the Force than the people who came before, and maybe Force powers expand. It's like, yeah, the stormtroopers fly now, and now the Jedi have extra powers.
But the stormtroopers fly before in a lot of games, so even that's nothing new. Maybe it's new for this movie, but bounty hunters fly, Boba Fett flied, so...
I'm just saying there's upgrades on both sides, and there should continue to be upgrades on both sides as technology moves forward in the world too. Like as they start making more Star Wars movies, as technology gets better, if they want to expand what we're capable of showing, then I'm okay with that.
So another part that people were pissed was that a large chunk of Death Star survived, right? So when obviously in the end of the episode 6, it seemed like it all blew up, right? But no, a chunk of it survived on that water planet. How did you feel about that? There was a Sith holocron somewhere there. It was beautiful in terms of exposition, and this is where Kylo and Rey met. And do you remember that part when Rey was fighting her dark side? Did you remember that part?
I like that a lot.
I knew you were gonna like that part. I knew it.
I compare that.
You're so predictable.
Well, you know what? I didn't like like it as much in the previous one where Rey is just caught in her reflection and there's like a bunch of her. It's like cool and surreal looking, but I don't really feel like there's any meaning in it, which is kind of consistent with the message of Star Wars. So it's like this kind of just infinite reflecting and reflecting. Whereas this one, it was like she actually had to face her inner fear of herself. It resonates back with the Luke going into the cave and fighting his father and seeing himself. It rhymes.
But again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme, every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one. Hopefully it'll work.
But I want you right, it rhymes, it's like poetry. But the problem is, but here again, it was so fast, you didn't even have a chance to really feel it, right? Because if you remember from the originals, right, that was an important moment when he saw his reflection. So the movie kind of took its time. He went there, explored the cave. It was all slowly paced and built up to that moment. But here, it's just, oh, I'm here. Oh, there's Darth Vader. Let's have a 3-second lightsaber fight. Oh, you're done. Let's go forward, forward, forward. The idea is great on paper. The theme is great. I totally agree. But again, it's so freaky forced. It feels
and fast.
meaningless.
Again, I think that's a generation difference. Things are faster now.
That's capitalistic production.
It's capitalistic production difference. Like kids these days are going to be getting their stuff faster and there's not going to be time to process because times are faster. I feel like it's just a different time, a different world. I'm not saying that I don't agree with you that I would have liked to seen it stretched out further, but I guess I'm saying that I can find some bigger picture like meaning even if it wasn't conscious. And I think that's how a lot of mythological analysis is anyways. They didn't mean to do it like this and it's messy and it's not what you would maybe want, but it actually says something about the time and the context in which it was made, and it reveals something about the time and the context in which it was made that makes it this way. The fact that it's a ride, that it's fast-paced, that it's got ADD, that it's kind of bipolar and jumping all over the place, that's the zeitgeist, and it kind of makes sense in this film at this point in this time in history. It's this generation's expression of Star Wars is this green cluster bipolar ADD thing. That's the time. So I think that's interesting. Whether it makes the movie better for watching it for us, that's one thing. We can say that we don't like those parts about it. But from another level, I go, of course it's like that. Yes. And I accept that container in which I'm getting it through.
It makes sense from the times we live in. So from that sense, it's almost to be expected. And we knew behind the scene it was all a mess. So in terms of expectations, I was basically expecting something like that anyway, right? So it's not like my expectations were subverted. I'm still kind of disappointed, even though there was a part of me who knew this was probably not repairable. So again, I agree that JJ did the best he could with the material he had and the time,
Alyosha,
which he didn't have.
I bet you one day we will get the integral Star Wars that we want. I hope so. The one,
we'll see.
The one where the dark side and the light side synthesize. They're coming closer towards the center. I feel it in the Force, man. It's happening slowly.
And this already happened in Extended Universe and also in games. So it's nothing new.
Who are these Jedi who survived the Jedi Civil War? They're not the Jedi I know, the ones I once worshipped. They are cowards, and doubters, and afraid. What manner of Jedi hide from a threat? Who turn on their own, and imprison them on dead worlds? When the Sith are destroyed, then I shall rebuild the Jedi Order again. They shall have none of the weaknesses of before. They shall be strong, willing to take battle to any who oppose them and weaken the Republic. They shall not train those who are easily corrupted. No more students that will bring war and hate to the galaxy.
So it's nothing new, but to see it in like a main trilogy kind of thing, yeah, I'm still waiting for that thing.
I'm still waiting too.
For that to be like a main theme.
I almost feel like the original Star Wars are more traditional. The prequels were more rational. They tried to bring in the science and the midichlorian.
Yeah.
And now these Star Wars are more green, postmodern. And I would really hope that the next Star Wars can be more integral, more with a plan.
I don't understand, David. Why are you trying to take all this time to explain ourselves? I want to go through my bulletin. We need to do it fast. ADHD time.
Quit rushing,
Why are you
man.
going against...
Let's take time and
against the movie? No. We're in a hurry. We need to finish this shit up, man. My Disney overlords are waiting for this podcast to end. See, even you're explaining Ghost against... You're actually going against the movie yourself.
Or I was going to say...
I'm becoming the movie and you're starting to become the original trilogy.
I was going to say that you're contradicting your criticisms here. Like even you and even this podcast is subject to the time that we live in and the zeitgeist and this idea of like, hurry, bring it fast, keep it going, no breaks, no ums, cut all that out, no time to process, breakneck speed, Here we go.
Listen to the
Lightspeed.
flicker shield. Don't strap yourselves in. I'm gonna make the jump to light speed.
We do that.
We are just victims of time.
Yeah, it's all part of the time we live in. No time to process.
So a large chunk of Death Star survived. It's weird, but whatever.
Yeah, it's weird, but whatever. That's fine.
So, do you remember that the old Luke's X-Wing was submerged underwater in the episode 2?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to not work because that was one of the reasons why Luke couldn't come there personally or something like that. But now it's established that it is working and it was brought out of the water so Rey could use it. Remember that part?
Yeah, and also, now that I'm thinking about it, if you can do this force move where you can affect...
Force repair.
Well, I was going to say, if you could do that thing where you can grab beads and you can cut things, doesn't Luke Skywalker have that power when he appears and teleports at the end? Why can't they have a real fight like they do in this one?
Yeah,
that's another problem. I didn't think about that till just now.
Did you know the ending part was shot 7 or 8 takes? And they did like a market research which one was the best one. So they had a lot of takes in terms of how ending was.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did that with like a lot of stuff. They'd be like, all right, let's try a bunch of things and then test them and see what works.
Did they really have so much time?
I think it's also important to remember that we take these things very, very seriously because they are at the point of generational mythology right now. It's been pointed out and said, these are kids' movies about space wizards. We just feel very attached to the symbolism because it runs so deep and it's so much a part of culture for so long that I think we do end up holding them to a really high standard.
Obviously, Star Wars is arguably the biggest franchise in our times.
Yeah.
Not in China. China doesn't like it at all. I think it bombed in China.
Is that right?
Yeah. But that's something special because China in general doesn't have nostalgia for the originals.
Okay.
So China doesn't have that connection, right? Let's just continue. So let's go to the final battle. I think this is where sort of the most things come or don't come together. So they come to that planet, Exogon or whatever it is. So under there's Palpatine and Rey and he wants her to strike down. On top of it, there's a spaceship battle. And Star Destroyers can't engage shields if they are in a planet's atmosphere. So we're gonna go a little technical here, right? So the reason they didn't have shields on is because they were in an atmosphere. That was never established. How did you feel about these technicalities in the end battle?
That didn't feel very good to me. It felt really weird because I didn't even really realize that they were in the atmosphere until I'm like, wait, we're riding horses on these things? Like, what's happening? I'm like, this can't be in space. What's happening here? This is really weird. Why are we doing this?
By the way, all these Star Destroyers came from underwater.
Yeah, what were they doing under there?
And they needed a navigational tower to tell them where to go because obviously there was no people in there. Obviously people were not waiting underwater, right?
Yeah.
So they were like remote control navigated. But then the Palpatine called it Final Order. They realized that the rebels tried to take down the radar dish, so they uploaded the radar thingy to their main Star Destroyer. So now they had to attack the main Star Destroyer, and they had to attack it with horses because the horses can't be jammed because they are real creatures, unlike starships, right? They prepared the horses ahead of time as if they expected that's gonna be the case.
It's like all about this metaphor of David and Goliath, this idea of the huge monolith and its ridiculous army versus the tiny rebel peasant country heart energy. This is where I feel like it does press into the green stuff, this almost like agrarian country folk heart stuff and the importance of feeling over this idea of science and the mind and all this kind of stuff. And I think this is where it really resonates with green too, you know, like this very blue and green theme of feelings and intuition over thinking about things too much.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny.
Go with the flow. All this kind of poetry is very Buddhist and resonates a lot with the Greens. If you are cool with that stuff and you're green, this is great. I would say green is kind of the general altitude of most pop culture stuff now. And
agree.
So you're going to get those green themes coming through thick. And they were in the original as well.
This is where the green meme kind of spread.
Right, it's more like the 60s style.
Yeah, because of the
baby
50s
boomers.
and the 60s. And then,
yeah,
I think that was where kind of the green meme went kind of mainstream with Star Wars.
Yeah.
At that time, it was like fresh, new, and original. But now it's almost like, oh yeah, whatever.
It was more like Christian, kind of like the Force and God God.
That too,
It could like resonate more with Christian ideas. The whole Jesus story almost is in there, and I am the Father and the Son and all this. It was like a lot more traditional, whereas now the new Force is green, postmodern, like the universe. There's like magic love energy that flows through the universe. Even at the end, he's like, strike me down and take me down. And she's like, I won't feel the mean, angry hate and fear. I won't be caught up in that. I'm not going to go with that. There's this kind of theme of you can't do it out of hate, which is good. There's good things about that. But sometimes it is appropriate to be angry. And you did come there to kill him. And you do kill him. So why not just kill him? Like, it doesn't mean that you're going to become this evil thing if you do it out of...
I think that maybe she should kill him, and then maybe his force powers and all the Sith would try to get in her, and she would try to
block it,
choose to block it, whatever.
Yeah.
We're not going to go into technicalities of the space battle. Eventually, all the Republic's fleets come, so it's now a lot of ships, if you remember that part, with Lando in charge.
And I like that idea. I think this is true. I think if we could actually get a revolution going, I mean, this is part of what I'm into.
People will follow if you lead them.
People will follow if you lead them.
You've got friends out there. Good people will fight if we lead them.
If you give people a way to be able to get involved in this thing, there are a lot of people who want to get involved. We are not alone. We are not as little and powerless as they make us feel. I like these themes. And I like the idea of having all the Jedi with you, standing on the shoulders of all the giants that came before and being a continuation of this power that's moved through the universe, through time.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight.
It's almost this Hegelian kind of battle of light and dark, these opposites or whatever, to try to find a synthesis through time. Pretty good poetry. Pretty classic stuff.
So how did you feel when the fleet comes, right? Palpatine wasn't afraid at all, because he's gonna show us the true power of the dark side. And then he uses a Force lightning huge ass EMP grenade that just shuts down, doesn't destroy the fleet, it just shuts it down for a while and then kind of fleet free falls or whatever. But he uses super Force lightning to disengage the fleet. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is just some silly magic thing that you're like, okay, it's Star Wars, space wizards. What I actually had a harder time with was the fact that there's like a whole amphitheater filled with these Siths, I guess, and they're all just...
Were they like Sith ghosts, or were they physical
I don't
things?
even know.
That was never really
Who are
explained.
they? What are they?
Yeah. Physical
I don't
things?
even know.
That was never really
Who are
explained.
they? What are they?
Yeah. Physical
I don't
things?
even know.
That was never really
Who are
explained.
they? What are they?
Yeah.
Who even
Are they
knows?
just like souls, dead souls, or dead Force souls that had capes?
No idea.
It's so bizarre.
No idea. That
And
whole
again, things like
sequence...
that needs to be explained and earned. You can't shove such a
right.
big thing.
It rhymes and everything, but I agree with you that it's not executed well, it's not explained well, it's not set up well. And you kind of, as an audience member, are just supposed to just go with it and take it and be like, well, okay, sure.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
It's like a huge arena, and there are like these Sith capes, and these are like the Sith Lords of all the generations, or their forces, or whatever. Your rap album rhymes a lot better than this.
Thanks, man. It's weird. I'll give you that. That end sequence, it feels like there's lots of unexplained things. All of it comes together in a very strange...
Yeah, and another thing, we didn't really see the space battle. In the original, the space battle, they were going into a Death Star, and it was all like build up to this moment in the episode 4 and the episode 6. But here, it wasn't the main part, which is fine, but there was not really any kind of battle at all. It was shown very little of the battle.
Yeah, it really all comes back to what's going on the surface.
Which is, I'm fine with that. I think that the surface part should be the main thing. Usually people are used to having important space battle, but here it was more like a side character.
This is one of those things in filmmaking. Yeah, it's not great. It kind of works. Knowing how much to show or how much you have to tell or how much you have to explain. Honestly, if they would have tried to rush some kind of explanation in with a lot of that stuff, we would also be like, yeah, this is more of them just trying to quickly explain it. Some things I'm fine with being unexplained, so deal with it.
Why then put all those technicalities in anyway, right? It's almost like the other characters had something to do. I don't know, it's kind of weird, because it seems like he was building up to something, right? Because they did want to destroy the tower and stuff, so it's weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
Then another problem people had is that, okay, so he uses this super EMP force grenade power thingy, and then he lightning strikes her, but then she just shields wields it with a very simple lightsaber, right? So you have a force power that can at least disengage the entire fleet, but then she just do it with the first lightsaber and then she puts out the second lightsaber. How did you feel about when he was shooting? And by the way, think about this one, and this is some comment section I got this idea. Just think about Palpatine's lightning history. So he uses the force lightning in the episode 3 when Mace Windu rejects the force lightning back at him and then he becomes deformed, right? He uses force powers in the episode 6 and then Darth Vader throws him down, and then he uses the force power again. Wouldn't at this point know that if somebody's holding a lightsaber, just stop using the force power because it's gonna shoot you back, you know what I mean? Shouldn't he learn from that at this point?
Yeah, maybe he should learn that it's dumb to be on the dark side because you always lose.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But if this is a lesson for Palpatine, when you use force powers and somebody blocks it with lightsaber, stop using the force power.
Yeah, he should have a lightsaber, I think.
I think it would be cheesy if he did at this point. He did have them in the prequels. Do you think he should be in a lightsaber fight with Rey?
That would have been cool. It looked like he was attached to that thing. That whole thing was keeping him alive.
I would rather see him try to use his force powers and integrate himself into Ben and fight Rey through Ben or something.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Puppeteer.
That would have been cool.
Ben was at light side at that point, right?
Right.
So he would probably just turn him dark for a while, but then he would be fighting Rey, but then Rey would say, "Come on, Ben, you can do it. Snap out of it," right? And at some point, Kylo would be able to resist Palpatine's puppeteering.
And then they kill him together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
See, this is why...
Hire me, Disney. Hire me.
Hire Alyosha. He understands the lore. He has good ideas. At least get him on your team to be able to criticize some of this stuff.
So he takes their souls, whatever, and then the voices of all the Jedi wake her up, right? Do you remember that part?
I remember that part.
You had Yoda, Mace Windu, and Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan.
I like that bit.
Even Anakin Skywalker, I think, was there.
I like that a lot.
I think I would be able to shoot the movie just made for you.
If you make a good...
Because you like those kind of themes.
If you make a good hero's journey movie for me, I am gonna like it.
It will be my passion pet project.
Well, I like that you care that much about me, Alyosha. Do you think that bit was cheesy? Is that why you say that?
At that point, it was fine. I think that maybe she should have at least talked with those Force Ghosts a bit more to have kind of connection. They kind of almost felt they came out of nowhere. Looking at it through the whole thing, I wasn't that bothered with it. There were many other things I was bothered with. How easily she disintegrated him.
They did kind of try to set it up like she was trying to get in touch with Jedi's past in the beginning in her training montage.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll call it passable.
Yeah, I really like the symbolism of it though.
What I didn't like is when she put in the both lightsabers and then she deflected back to him and he just disintegrated and that's it. And then she kind of fell down because she was exhausted and then Ben came and made her alive and then they kissed and then he died because he gave her his own force essence so she could survive, something like that.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that part?
I really had to think about it in the moment. I'm like, wait, why is he dying? I guess she already killed him. I mean, like, okay. I would have liked it better if they would have both been able to live. A lot of people won't feel like this because it's like, let somebody die. That's fine. We can deal with it. I don't know. I want him to continue his story. Like, I felt like we did a lot of work to make a lot of progress with him.
Well, she can just like force essence back and then she can die.
He can be a force ghost.
You can play with it. Well, yeah, he could be a force ghost. They can have a relationship, obviously. Force ghosts can now deal with physical stuff, so it shouldn't be a problem.
You're right. Life doesn't even matter that much anymore at this point.
I like the idea of him dying. I think the only good part of this was actually Kylo Ren character. I actually just like him in this part because in the first two he was like a teenage emo kind of guy.
Yeah.
I didn't even feel like he was dangerous or dark.
Right.
In the episode 2 he became more kind of darker, but here I felt like he did have kind of arc that makes sense. He became more mature, he became Ben, he became the child he originally was.
Well, that's the theme too, is these dudes who are the scary monster is actually just this immature little child or this shriveled old
didn't have love
weasel or something.
He rebelled.
Yeah.
And that's usually how it is in real life.
Yeah.
You know, evil people a lot of the time are just misunderstood neglected as children. Han Solo was never there for him. He was being controlled by Palpatine.
He felt betrayed by Luke.
So he was basically
all this stuff.
emotionally manipulated from the start. So it makes sense that he became evil. Yeah. So I guess this sort of arc kind of makes sense. So I liked Ben in this episode. I think he was probably the brightest point in this trilogy, in my opinion, as a character.
Yeah.
I think Palpatine was kind of forced, shoehorned in. He felt kind of almost like a parody of himself. And he was probably like that all the other movies as well. Maybe I did wanted something new from him. I don't know. I wasn't impressed with the Emperor this time around. I think Ben was probably the strongest part. And I like C-3PO with that part. I think they used him okay.
I like these movies better than I like the prequels because I think that the way the prequels were shot is really ugly. Like it's all green screen, all of it's on like tripod.
There was actually more particle effects in the episode 1 than it was in the original trilogy, if I recall. But there was a lot of green screen in episode 2 and 3. It almost felt like a cartoon.
Yeah, it felt like a cartoon. Yeah. These ones, stylistically, they feel a lot more real. Star Wars has really come into modern times with these movies in terms of production.
Well, in their defense, the CGI and the technology is a lot better now than it was. Because even back then, Attack of the Clones was like a pinnacle of what you can do with special effects.
Yes,
right? It's huge for 2002. To have that kind of battle in 2002, all CG was crazy. Amazing back then, right?
Absolutely.
Sure, it looks like a cartoon today. I totally agree. But it really did kind of go to the extreme for the times. But I agree that it was kind of cartoony.
I think Star Wars, in terms of maybe not the speed of the storytelling, but in terms of just the production and the look and the way that they are doing it, I feel like it looks better now than it ever has. Of course, you know, we're dealing with a lot new technology, so it's not really a lot to say. But that early shot where all the stormtroopers are falling in front of like there were some like cool shots in there that were practical. These movies, they actually did go back to a lot more of the original in terms of being real cameras in real places and
real cameras. Yeah.
It feels more real, even though it's got the CG elements. It's doing a good job.
I definitely agree in terms of visual presentation and realness that these movies are more real than the prequel. And I'll give you that this was the best movie for me compared to The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
Let's put summaries on the movie thing, and then we'll talk about the future, and then we'll give grades.
I'll start with the summary. So we know how the production was, and I agree with you that JJ did okay, or did the best he could with the things he had. He was in an extremely stressful situation. He had 2 years to tie up all the ends, make a 2.5 hour movie in 2 years. It was a cluster from the get-go. It had no direction. Obviously, it seems like he had to shoehorn a lot of these new abilities that were not earned. So as a whole, I think for me, this is the worst trilogy. Worse than the prequels. I like the original best, prequel seconds, like I said, and this is the third. But if I have to pick the lesser of all evil, I do think this one felt the most Star Warsy. It had the right themes, I agree. It's just because they were rushed, it didn't felt true for me. But in terms of the best movie of the trilogy, I think this one is the best movie of the Disney trilogy, although I like this trilogy the least because of the first 2 episodes. How did you feel?
I went into it thinking all the things that you're talking about. I knew it was going to be this way, and I mostly was wearing like a mythological hat when I was watching it. I was thinking about it through the lens of like relating to these characters and the archetypes and the meanings, and I found lots of really moving symbolism in it. Regardless of how quickly it was set up, some of it was really working for me, and especially in relation to the last movie, I felt like they did a really good job of salvaging a lot of what might have went wrong. I'm glad to see that we moved away from the nihilism and allowed for Jedis to be wrong and starting to move more towards the light on the dark side and the dark on the light side, moving more towards a synthesis. It had its problems, but there's a lot of good messages in there. I really like this theme of don't be afraid to be you and to find your path and to deal with your past. I really like this generational thing of how Star Wars is going into this new place and how it's fresh for a new generation and it honors the themes of the past. Maybe there's going to be greater powers. It worked for me. It was fast. It was a ride. It was commercial. It was pop, but I knew it was going to be all that stuff. Like you said, to me, this one felt the most Star Wars out of these new movies. It felt like he was able to salvage the project from the cluster of before and try to make something still positive and meaningful and powerful on the other side of it. I think he undercut himself at several points, but then a lot of that stuff I could be like, yeah, but it's for the kids and that's why he did it that way. It's a little cheesy. It's all these things. But as a piece of art, as a part of the overall Star Wars mythology, like thinking of it in terms of the original one being more blue, the prequels being more orange, and this one being more green, all the problems that are in it, that all feels green to me. It's kind of like it's supposed to be like this, and I'm kind of okay with it, even though it's got all these problems. For me, it was an enjoyable experience. I would watch them all again, and I'd be more likely to go watch these new Star Wars again than I would be to go back and watch the prequels. I thought there was a lot of really dumb things in the prequels. A monologue about sand and like that.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Give me the blue juice over lines about sand and like that unlikable Anakin. I like the characters in this more for the most part. I feel like we did a good job with dealing with the main characters, especially in this last one. I feel like it ties it up kind of nicely in terms of Ben and Rey. And yeah, I was pretty happy with it, to be honest. And especially when you think about it in context of like what it was to try to make this thing and how it is in the larger mythology, I'm cool with it. There's a lot of production mistakes. I totally agree with that. But big picture, I like it.
Well, if I compare it to prequels, I agree that in terms of, sure, there are obviously a lot of cringy parts. But prequels, I think, had two things going for it, or three. World building, which was alright. There was nothing like super, there was no convenience or any kind of weird plot devices, at least in terms of magic force thingies like here. So I think it was more down to lore. Sure, the acting was good, world building was better, Star Wars lightsaber fights were better in this.
Yeah, that's all true.
9th episode, Star Wars lightsaber fights existed, but they were pointless.
I agree with you with that. Prequels win for that, for sure. I think that's right. The prequels might be the best for that kind of stuff, like the battles and the saber fighting.
And prequels also opened up a lot of outside lore for extended universe, something that this movie didn't. This movie should have taken from extended universe and apply it to here, but it's trying to do its own thing. I still think that prequels are better. I will take the sand over the blue milk thing any day.
Okay, so we could disagree about that. If you were like, okay, you have to rewatch one of the trilogies, would you watch the prequels or would you watch these new ones?
I would watch the prequels any day.
Okay.
I would only, if I had to choose which one of the new ones, the Disney ones, I would definitely choose this episode. I do think this episode is one of those that you need to watch 2-3 times because it's so ADHD. I guess this is something good going for it. It's almost forcing you to watch the movie 2-3 times, and I'm gonna watch it probably with my family. In terms of likability, I still think prequels are a bit better. So let's go to the stars. So I gave The Last Jedi, so let me just recap. I think Force Awakens I would probably give 2 stars. I would give The Last Jedi 1.5 star, and I would give this one, so our star rating is half a star is horrible, 5 stars is excellent, and 2.5 stars is average. So I'll give this, based on what you're saying, maybe I was originally going for the 2 stars, but now understanding it in the context you brought it in, I think themes are great. I just think they are underdeveloped and unearned, but at least he was going in the right direction, and I think this direction would be finer if it went from the beginning, from episode 7 to now, but because it was so shoehorned, it doesn't work for me, so that's why I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars. It's the best of the Disney trilogies, but that's not saying much because I hated Force Awakens. I think it was horrible, and I hated Last Jedi even more, or probably the same page. Both of them horrible movies. This one was okay. I'll give this one 2.5 stars. What's your opinion?
Well, I'm glad I was able to get you to move the needle at least a little bit. When I talked to Kai about it last night, we had a pretty passionate conversation, and he started off being like, yeah, I don't even know if it gets 1 star. And by the time we finished talking, he was like, maybe I give it like 3 stars. Boom! So I was able to move his meter on it pretty well.
Well, I'm glad that Kai was more on my side. I guess me and Kai would probably agree a lot more on this one.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to feel like that. I actually hope that this talk allows people to maybe see more of the good things in it.
I guess so. I think obviously most people will criticize the heck out of this movie, right?
Yeah.
So maybe us presenting, or more you presenting a different narrative, maybe could enlighten some people to give it a more credit.
Maybe I gave it a little bit more of a passionate case when I was talking to Kai last night, because I feel like I did a pretty good job of moving his needle. But yeah, like really pushing into the things that it's like, no, you know what? This is relevant to your life. We are trying to be on this rebellion. And yeah, it's hard. It feels like you're constantly going to die and that you're not going to make it. And you're living on this life's blade edge. And it's scary. But what's the alternative? You're going to go join the system and be a slave and do this as an artist, as a person trying to make it, as an entrepreneur, as a person who cares about the big picture. Like, these themes resonate deep. So for me, I want to give it something more like a 4. To me, it's kind of an average movie. It's fast. It's kind of a fun ride. It's just
4 in our rating is really good.
It is good.
Because 3 stars is slightly above average.
Yeah.
3.5 is good. 4 is probably really good. 4.5 is really, really good. And 5 is excellent. Something like that.
I think it's good. It did the thing of being a fun ride to go on, a fun movie to watch, just in like a simple kind of way. And to me, there were some really moving parts. Like, I was really moved almost to tears at a couple parts. When he met his father and when Chewie was crying because his friend died, that part, they stayed on that for a minute and we got to really feel. There were points in this movie that moved me. Maybe it's because I'm able to see some of these themes and read them more poetically and that I'm not just immediately being like, well, why? And like, that's cheesy, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like a lot of the things that a lot of people think are cheesy, they resonate with me in a way that matters. And yeah, it might be delivered in kind of a cheesy way. And maybe I'm kind of a cheesy person, but like, I find some of that stuff to be beautiful. And so for me, like, not only was it fun, but I was moved. I liked the themes that it brought up. I liked the message that it was doing. And I'm like, yes, this is good Star Wars for now. For the modern times or for the postmodern times, this is it.
Another thing I forgot to mention is Star Wars music in this one was actually a lot better than The Last Jedi. I actually felt like there were more tunes that kind of felt memorable.
The operatic themes are awesome.
John Williams did a better job with this one in terms of music, because in The Last Jedi it was also forgettable. But here, I swear to God, there was a part in the movie when Poe, I think, was talking with Bliss and there was a Knights of the Old Republic theme song. I swear to God, it was so freaking similar. I'm still trying to find that song. It's so weird. But anywho, yeah, I just want to put it in as well. John Williams' score did a good job in this one. A lot better than The Last Jedi. First, I'm gonna go into my pitch of why Disney should hire me.
Okay. Did you do this last time too?
Yeah, I'm trying again.
Try again.
Maybe JJ will hear me. Maybe Kathleen Kennedy will hear me. So, what's next for Star Wars? Obviously, they're gonna continue with Mandalorian and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, that's awesome.
My pitch would be to do a Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic era, which could be in the future or in the past, doesn't matter. Denis Villeneuve, who made Sicario and Blade Runner, the new one, should be the director, and the story writer should be the one who made Knights of the Old Republic second part, the Sith Lords. And then you need a great scriptwriter. I don't know which one that should be, but putting those 3 people together and make them work on a new whatever trilogy it is, this is where I would see, I think, Star Wars shine on a level that was never before. And they should probably have 2.5 or 3 years between each movie and have a plan, have somebody to have an overarching story, have some kind of direction. I think this is where Disney should go, in my opinion, in terms of making new trilogy. Let's do new characters, new villains, something totally new, and see where can we go from there. But we need competent people, and this is where I see. Another thing is super important. We should have a Star Wars in reverse. So we always have a light side character having his arc, but now I would want to do it from a dark side character who might even stay dark. I just want to see a Star Wars movie and see how Sith train, how Sith do all the things we saw, how is their point of view. See, we would basically turn and see how Sith see Jedi as evil, and maybe we can see through our new antagonist, who's a Sith Lord or becoming a Sith Lord, how he sees the world.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
So you can explore the darker sides, how they train, how they see, and Jedi be the quote-unquote evil people, right? So this is what I want to see from the next generation of Star Wars. Well, what do you think about where I want to see Star Wars go? How do you see a meta narrative of Star Wars continuing?
I think you need to hire Alyosha. He seems like he knows what we all want to see. That sounds pretty legit. I like Rey. I know a lot of people don't, but like after this arc, after where we've come to the point where she's explored her past and she's claimed herself and named herself as Skywalker, I want to see where we go from here. And I really feel like she could be a character who could potentially do what we want to do in terms of creating this synthesis, creating a new future Jedi order. maybe taking on another apprentice and maybe teaching them some kind of a balance, you know, like she could be the one who brings balance to the Force.
Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness.
I would love to see a future integral, synthesized version of the continuation of this story. Maybe a rebuilding story, something about setting up new governance and a new way of doing things and a new synthesized version of the Force. That'd be great. And, you know, I'd love to see what you're talking about too. Like, go back and let's explore it from the other side. Let's talk about the positive sides. I mean, really, that's kind of what we're talking about. Both of these things together, I think, break the simple binary that this Star Wars world has had from the beginning. And the more and more we can do that we can push into this, like, let's see pros and cons on both sides. Let's find a more healthy synthesis in the middle. That's where I think the future of this myth needs to go for it to be healthy, for it to be more integral, for it to move into that next stage of development and bring that down for the culture.
Obviously, we need to have competent people knowing what they're doing. Unfortunately, Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, and JJ are not. JJ is probably the lesser of all evil, maybe if he had all 3 episodes.
Yeah.
But putting that aside, so I agree with you as well. We can also go this integral kind of way, finding the balance. I think both of our ideas are great. Could Rey do it? I think that if we had competent story writers, I think Rey could work. I agree with you here. It's all about the people you hire. So maybe if they hire us, we can do something.
That would be good. We'd be good ones to hire.
But another problem I have, and this is just in these huge ass movies in general, is the problem of meta grand narrative, right? So everything has to be bigger, better, stronger, and faster. So if you think about it, even in this episode, even though it wasn't all that important, but do you know that each of those Star Destroyers had the power to destroy the planets? So each of those Star Destroyers were basically Death Stars. Did you know that?
Yeah, that was the idea of each one of them having a cannon that could blow up a planet.
Yeah, obviously that wasn't even used as a threat. I mean, only once it was used. And this is the problem why I think Mandalorian works so well. Because Mandalorian is a smaller story within the big universe, but here it always had to be bigger and better. There's always had to be a lot more at stake. And I think the problem is, do we always have to go so big? You know what I mean? Why does it always have to be the whole galaxy on the line? And why does always have to be a bigger threat? How do you feel about this meta-narrative problem?
In some sense, there's something that I feel is kind of right about it. Because, like, they talk about her as the last hope, and this is like the final order and all this kind of stuff. I mean, at every point in it, in this kind of struggle versus good and bad, it always feels like this is the final battle and everything is at stake.
Let the final battle begin.
You want to have this kind of like, this is do or die right now, not just for me, but for everything. And if I don't fully commit to it, we are all... And I think that especially is relevant to the time that we live in. I feel like there is this deep panic. We all feel small. We all feel powerless. We all feel like we can't do it and that we're in it totally alone. And I feel like this is the right theme for the right time. This is the final order. We are the last hope. Like, are we going to name ourselves and claim ourselves? And even though you're never ready, you're never going to be fully ready, you got to go in anyways. Yeah, you haven't finished your chaining. Yeah, you're not ready, but we're going to do it anyways. And yeah, it's going to be on the seat of our pants. We're not going to have time to process any of the deep realizations that we get because it's all going breakneck speed. But we got to be fully dedicated to this thing because everything's at stake. And you know, maybe in the future, it'll be like that for future generations too. Maybe it's always like this. It feels like everything's at stake. The whole world might end, the world as we know it. That's kind of how the universe in flux goes. It's the best of times. It's the worst of times. We need to get involved because everything's at stake. That seems right.
I agree with you within the idea of zeitgeist of the times that we live in. I totally agree. Obviously, a lot of our systems that our society is based on are tearing apart, and we are battling this huge behemoth of capitalism, and we're not ready. We don't know what to do. We know it's going somewhere, probably not the best place. We don't have the tools. We're just kind of going as we go, and we are not ready, like you said. And I agree in terms of if you want to kind of square that with the times we live in, right? But I'm not talking about it from such a view. I'm more saying in terms of overproducing something too far. Like, we already have so many bigger, better, stronger, faster narratives.
Yes.
And this is why I think Mandalorian is a good kind of step back, because it's a smaller story. And that's why they like it a bit more.
I agree with you. I think that...
And I think they're going way too epic all the time for no reason.
I'm thinking that after these three,
with this one, I think it might chill out on that. This is considered to be the capstone of this huge thing that's been building up for years and years and years.
40 years.
If we do like another trilogy in the future, I feel like we can chill out and take our time a little bit more, and it won't feel like it has to go at such breakneck speed to try to weave all these threads together in a way that makes sense over all these years. We can kind of chill out a little bit and take our time with it more. I feel like it's kind of a product of the situation that it came out of. And
do you think that 7, 8, or 9 are even stories that needed to be told in the first place? Do you think that Disney should have just gone a new direction anyway? I know it was sort of a marketing thing, but how do you really feel now that we have all Ninthology, whatever you want to call it? Do you feel like these 3 Disney episodes tied all the things together, or do you think they were just a waste of time and it should end at the originals? How do you feel about extending the story of the originals?
I feel like it actually does an all right job, or at least at the project of trying to put a cap on the previous stories and to use that as a way to introduce future characters and expand it and pass the torch, as well as include the previous generation. I feel like that project is a worthwhile project. Now, whether they accomplished it perfectly, I don't know. I don't really think so. It's interesting. It is what it is. There's good things about it. There's bad things about it. I think it was a worthwhile project, and I think that it's a good way to hopefully allow for us to be done with them now. We are done with them, right? There's not going to be any more Luke, or probably not going to be any more Leia, maybe only as ancestral spirits, but we're done with their stories now. We're done with Darth Vader. We're done with the Emperor. We're done with all that stuff. So it really finalizes it in a way and allows for there to be new characters that come out of it that can go further. In that regard, I feel like it does an alright job.
I did kind of like that Rey at the end had like a black lightsaber, but it was a yellow glow. So she had a yellow crystal. Did you notice that? So yellow is like a combination, let's say, between green or blue and red. So it's like an in-between color. It's not like all dark and all light. You know what I mean?
So it hints at it. It hints at the
synthesis.
Maybe
it hits something in that direction. For me, if I put a final touch on it, I think that these new 3 stories were a mess. I think the last one, like I said, was the best. And if anything comes out of these stories is, I hope that Disney learned that you need, first of all, have competent people, which obviously Kathleen Kennedy is not. And then also you need to prepare to have a grand narrative in place and then follow it through, right? And I hope that Disney executives and people will learn from the mistakes that JJ and Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy did. So I hope that this trilogy, as much as it was a mess for me and a horrible trilogy, I hope it's a good learning lesson.
Yes.
Not just for how do you not shoot a story, but to have a respect for what it was done beforehand. And I hope that we learn the lesson of how now to do movies and make a new fresh trilogy, or even continue this one, I don't care, but have something planned and follow through.
This is the lessons of Green, as far as I can see, is that you can't just go with the flow and figure it out how it goes. Otherwise, it's going to be a big mess. You might be able to get through it, but it's not going to be a masterpiece because it wasn't well thought out, and you're just going to end up, basically, the part of the problem is that they end up just paying lip service to all these things in a really shallow way. And that's what Green does. You know, it talks all this stuff about love and not fear and all these kinds of things, but like when it really comes down to it, it doesn't really do the work, doesn't really put in the practice and put in the time to make it be what it really needs to be. And so to really do it right, you got to put in the work. You got to make the distinctions. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to be qualified to be able to do it better. And that means being more mature, having a plan going in and understanding how all these themes go together. You know, like it's going to take an integrative perspective and an integrally informed understanding to be able to really do this thing skillfully. And so I'm hoping, like you're saying, that like we can all learn the lessons from these things, and that in the future that we can have a more skillful and integrative approach. And hopefully this is also like through the development of this kind of mythology in public, that these can also be lessons that we all learn through looking at these things. These things become examples not only in terms of the archetypes and how they play out, but in terms of the behind-the-scenes archetypes and the lessons that we can learn from them expressed through their art. Super cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I do hope that lessons are being learned here and for a brighter future, not just in terms of movies, Obviously, movies are just an expression of our time. But also, I hope for our times in general, that we can learn something from ourselves and create a better systems and so on. So I'm totally on the same boat here.
Thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate the time that you spent with us. We hope you enjoyed this talk about Star Wars and archetypes and how it relates to our life, and that you really got something out of this more than just movie criticism. It made you think about your life and how you live and all these kinds of things. That's the point of these kinds of podcasts, not just to look at the surface of things, but to be able to dig deeper and hopefully get something out of it. If you like this, Alyosha and I, we spend a long time working on these things. We've already spent a good amount of hours watching the movies and making notes and thinking about these things really critically, and we're going to spend a lot more time on the back end editing it, trying to make it short and brief and tight for you, like the opening of this movie at a breakneck speed. Hopefully you're able to follow it. But we really appreciate and respect your time. If you appreciate us, we would really love whatever kind of support you can give us. We have Patreon and all that kind of stuff down in the links. And make sure you share with your friends if you think that they would like this kind of thing too. Like and subscribe if you haven't already.
And if you have any questions for us, comment down below.
Thanks everybody again. Peace.
Peace.